Hello everyone, today we'll find out how many gadgets you have to use in order to beat Batman Arkham Knight. This is the final game of the Arkham series, so after completing it we'll know how many gadgets you have to use in order to beat the whole Batman series. Before we start with the challenge, let's go through the rules, and they're pretty simple. First is that I'm counting every single gadget use that I use. However, cutscene gadget uses do not count because I have no control over Batman in those situations. Also, the Batmobile counts as a gadget, so that would be fun for this game. Every single time I have to use the Batmobile, I have to count this. And this brings us to the second rule, which is entirely connected to the Batmobile. I decided that I'll only be counting the moments you enter the Batmobile or you activate the remote control, because otherwise I'll have to count every single cannon shot you have to do in order to win a tank battle. So regardless of whether I stay in the car for 10 minutes or for 2 seconds, I will be counting both as one use of the Batmobile. However, in situations where you use the remote control and then immediately jump into the car as Batman, I won't count that as separate Batmobile uses because you literally don't do anything in between stopping the remote control and entering the Batmobile. You may walk a couple of steps, but that's pretty much it, so I'll be counting those cases as one gadget usage. With that, the rules are pretty much complete, and so we can begin with the challenge. Our story begins in the Gotham Diner, where after unsuccessfully trying to raise up the waitress, we're interrupted by some random green shirt guy who whines and complains about some guy smoking in the other corner of the establishment. And even though there is absolutely no way that he would be bothered by the smoke from this position, he still has to bother you with dealing with it instead of, I don't know, asking the guy to stop smoking himself? Is it that difficult? Anyway, the guy turns out to be a zombie and we're immediately attacked by a bunch of them, and since I want to avoid gadget uses as much as possible, I couldn't even use my gun to defend myself, so I was annihilated by the zombies. Thank you, random green shirt guy. This was all your fault. If you weren't bothered by the stupid smoke, I wouldn't be infected now. Well, since being a police officer didn't work out, let's go back to being Batman. And as the Dark Knight, you have to go to the roof of the GCPD building. To do so, you don't have to use any gadget uses, you just have to glide. When you reach the roof, you have to use the ladders in order to talk with Jim, so that you don't have to use the grapple gun. You talk with Jim for a while and he says the funniest thing ever.
I'm just glad my little girl got out when she did.
Yeah, definitely she got out, yeah. I am going now to talk with my butler. Yeah, my butler. Definitely not with your daughter who's still in the city. No, don't worry, Jim. I ran away from Jim as fast as I could and even beat up a few criminals in order to save a policeman's life. After saving the guy, Batman uses a grapple shot during a cutscene, and then he has to even the odds by using the Batmobile for the first time. Well, it didn't take us long to use the first gadget of the game. Anyway, after I beat up the militia people, I decided to break this guy's arm for no reason, and after that Batman uses his detective vision inside of a cutscene. Then you have to go and save Poison Ivy from a safe house in Chinatown, and to do so you have to use your grapple gun once in order to reach the roof of the building. Then you beat up a bunch of militia people and release Poison Ivy. Unfortunately, when you get out of the building, you're ambushed by a bunch of tanks, so you have to call upon the Batmobile yet again. You then have a tank battle and put Poison Ivy into the Batmobile, and after that Batman has the audacity to waste Poison Ivy's time by having a tutorial tank battle, followed by a legit one right after. I also won't count this as a separate gadget use because we literally went from being in the Batmobile to having a cutscene to being back in the Batmobile, so I'm counting that as the same usage of the Batmobile. I then dropped off Ivy into the GCPD and decided to steal my electric charge because why the hell did I leave it in the GCPD in the first place? That cost so much money, I'm not just gonna leave it there. I then had to get into the Batmobile because for some reason I cannot get out of the GCPD in any other way, and then head to the clock tower to meet with Oracle. And since you don't have your new suit yet, you have to grapple up twice to get to the roof of the clock tower. After that, for some reason, Batman doesn't know how to activate the secret entrance of the clock tower, so he has to use the detective mode in order to reveal the secret base. After you have a short chat with Oracle, you have to use the grapple in order to get out of the clock tower instead of, I don't know, using the elevator like a normal person. You then have to turn on the power in the movie studios, and to do so you have to call up the Batmobile in order to install the power wrench. You play with the Batmobile for a while there and then have to rescue a hostage. And in a moment of cowardice, Batman refuses to get in the vent in order to fight the soldiers. He first wants to use his detective mode, grapple up a gargoyle and distract two of them so he can take them out that way. After that, he does an even more cowardly move by getting a new suit in order to beat up the rest of the guys. Cutscene, Batman then throws a batarang in order to locate Scarecrow's whereabouts, and you go to the Ace Chemical building where you have to grapple up in order to enter. And then you have to activate your detective mode because otherwise Batman would refuse to do anything else. Followed by that you go to a Predator section where you have to beat up all of the militia thugs and then grapple up 2 more times in order to reach the top of the Ace Chemicals building, where cutscene Batman throws his batarang again. You then have to rescue the technicians and get the Batmobile to the Ace Chemicals facility. To do so you call Oracle to open the doors for you, then you activate the remote Batmobile so you can use the power winch in order to just casually drag the road and make yourself a ramp. Following that you go into the Ace Chemicals yard where you have a tank battle and then launch yourself off the Batmobile so you can activate the ramp and place it in the place you need to proceed forward. Then I went to rescue another technician. Unfortunately we were ambushed, so I had to use the remote Batmobile yet again in order to rescue the technician. Remaining inside of the Batmobile, we then use the ramp in order to have another tank battle. And then after you win the battle, you can use the Batmobile in order to eject yourself, and that way you can avoid using the grapple one time. Following that you have to find the third technician, and to do so you have to use your explosive gel 2 times. And you may be tempted to use the explosive gel a third time, however it would be better to use the remote Batmobile, because that way you can destroy the wall and then attach the power wrench to destroy the hot steam pipe which is blocking your way. After that you go back to being Batman for like a minute, only to open a door which will allow you to use the remote Batmobile again just to destroy a wall, then use the power winch yet again in order to get the elevator upstairs. Following that you have to switch back to Batman only to enter the elevator, then switch back to the Batmobile in order to lower the elevator. In order to locate the final technician you have to grapple up once, then beat up the militia, find the hostage and then use the Batmobile in order to get the elevator upstairs again. Following that cutscene, Batman enters the Batmobile so he can have a tank battle yet again. You then drop off the technician back to Gordon, then continue using the Batmobile in order to blow up a wall. After that you have to launch yourself off the Batmobile again in order to use the crane, then get back to the Batmobile and use the ramp. You have to destroy 2 tanks after that and then launch yourself so you can get to the next area. Unfortunately, for some reason, your gliding skills are not good enough to reach the second ledge, so you have to do this tiny grappling. After that you use the grapple again in order to get into the vents and defeat the militia soldiers before you're attacked by the sentry gun. Since you cannot enter the next area with the Batmobile, you then have to take a stroll for a while and then use the grappling hook in order to get into the next area, after which you have to beat up a bunch of militia soldiers, and when you do so you can open the door for the Batmobile, which you only have to use in order to launch yourself because there are spikes blocking your way. You then go to a Predator section and confront Scarecrow for the first time, and instead of knocking him out for literal seconds like you do with every single other enemy in the game, Batman decides to just beat him up a bit and then lets him go after he hears that Barbara may be in danger, so Scarecrow just walks away. You then do your best to contain the explosion radius and get jump scared.
Miss me?
After that, you take a very nice nap so you can play with Jim for a while, and he's perfectly fine with Batman keeping prisoners. Back to the present, Joker justifiably mocks you for letting Scarecrow go, and then you have to use the Batmobile in order to escape Ace Chemicals. Annoyingly, Batman exits the Batmobile the moment Ace Chemical blows up, so in order to get to the GCPD to tell Gordon that his daughter has been captured, you have to get into the Batmobile again. You and Gordon then have to go to the clock tower, and in order to get inside you can use the Batmobile to launch yourself and glide to the roof. Unfortunately, before you can do that you have to go to a Predator section, so no matter what you do after you defeat the militia, you still have to either grapple or use the Batmobile to launch yourself in order to get back to the roof of the clock tower so you can enter. Why don't you just enter using the goddamn elevator like Jim does? Like, I guess you won't have time to have a flashback, but it's not like the clock tower was in Oracle mode anyway. What was your issue, Batman? Why couldn't you just join Jim in the elevator? Why do you force me to use gadgets for no reason? Stop using the damn Batmobile so much! Who are you, Batman or Tankman?
I never should have trusted you. Never!
At this point he just does it to annoy me. I know that it would have been awkward to take the elevator with Jim, but it was an option. Like, he literally needs to jump downstairs in order to get into the Batmobile and find Oracle. You have to go to Miyagani Island, and to do so you have to lower the bridge by destroying the militia's base. In order to destroy the base you have to go to a Predator section, so you have nothing to worry about there. After that the freaking Riddler shows up and is like, I'm gonna kill Catwoman if you don't pay attention to me, so you have to go and do a side quest. I rescued Catwoman, told the Riddler that he wouldn't see me again tonight, and then had to get out of his hideout, but to do so I had to use the grappling hook once. Back to the Batmobile we go, and once Alfred lowers the bridges you have to have a tank fight, after which you can proceed with searching for Batgirl. When you find where the militia vehicle crashed you have to use the evidence scanner in order to review the footage. Thankfully, unlike with Arkham Origins, Batman doesn't constantly turn off the scanner for no reason, so only one usage is required. After that you have to go to Wayne Tower, and I could only get there using 3 grapples because the building is actually huge. You manage to track where the Arkham Knight is hiding. Unfortunately, before you can do anything about that you have to go through yet another tank battle. How many tanks does this man have? When you arrive at the hideout you have to use the Batmobile to launch yourself, and after that use the remote controlled Batarang to press a button. Then you have to use the line launcher twice in a row so you can reach the next area. Then you activate the remote controlled Batarang again and have to position yourself perfectly in order to use the line launcher just once, as normally you would have to use it twice. You find where the militia are hiding, and to be sneaky Batman has to use the grapple 3 times in order to sneak around without being spotted. Unfortunately you get attacked by the Arkham Knight, and he doesn't try to kill you for some reason, he just wants to torture you a bit. You then beat up a few militia thugs and let the Batmobile join the party. You then have to get out of the Batmobile in order to open another door. Following that you have to chase the Arkham Knight, and unfortunately it turns out that you were bamboozled and this was not actually the Arkham Knight, so Batman does the only logical thing and tortures the guy with the Batmobile's tire on his head. But when he meets with Scarecrow he just punches him a few times. Make it make sense, why does the random henchman get the treatment of the Batmobile's tire but freaking Scarecrow gets punched? Anyway, you then have yet another tank battle. Then you meet up with Nightwing for the first time and acquire the Disruptor, which you immediately use 3 whole times in order to defuse the Penguin's man's guns. After that you go downstairs and have to use the Disruptor a 4th time to mark the van the other thugs are using. Following that you have to go to a small Predator section in order to enter the Penguin's hideout. You then enter to threaten Cobblepot and beat up his henchmen with the help of Nightwing. When you beat up everyone you have to use the explosive gel in order to blow up the Penguin stuff. Okay, Nightwing, be sure that if I ever get captured again, you don't show up, okay? Like, even if the situation is very bad and I'm about to die, just stay away. In order to leave the hideout, you have to use the grapple once, and then you see that the militia are about to ambush you, so you have to grapple up one more time and activate the remote controlled Batmobile to save yourself. Your next stop is Simon Stark's airships, and in order to get inside one of them, you have to first destroy one of the militia's strongholds. That's pretty easy to do. Cutscene Batman activates detective mode, so you don't have to worry about the soldiers. When you beat them all up, you have to use your explosive gel in order to destroy the watchtower. Then you have to go back to Wayne Tower in order to acquire the remote hacking device. This time, in order to get on top of the tower, I had to use the grapple 2 times. Then you have to glide on top of the airship and use the remote hacking device for the first time. Then you almost immediately use the remote hacking device again in order to hack the malicious drone. And the third time in order to unlock a door. You acquire the tilting controls of the airship, so you have to use the remote hacking device again in order to tilt the airship and get obstacles out of your way. After you do that, you walk for a bit and then use the remote hacking device again in order to tilt the airship. You have to use the remote hacking device yet again in order to tilt the airship for the third time. Following that, you finally do something that's not tilting the airship or using the remote hacking device, and that's using the grapple, when you're immediately attacked by this brute who you beat up instantly and have to use the remote hacking device yet again. You then finally find Stark and beat up the militia who captured him. Unfortunately, this is when you have a Joker hallucination, and because of that Stark gets recaptured, so you have to find him yet again. So you use the remote hacking device again, and this is a giant waste of time because a turret immediately starts shooting at you the moment you try to exit the ship. So you have to go downstairs and use your remote hacking device to tilt the ship. You have to use the remote hacking device a total of 3 times in order to proceed forward. And you immediately have to use the remote hacking device yet again in order to open another door, and then use the grappling hook twice so you can get to the next area. You now have to go through a predator section and take down the malicious crew. Then you have to use the evidence scanner in order to get Simon Stark's fingerprints. And now that you have the fingerprints, you're able to hack the rest of the ship. You start with, you guessed it, the remote hacking device. You then beat up the militia, use the remote hacking device yet again, and then glide into the next ship. There you have to beat up a few more militia and use the explosive gel in order to blow up a wall, which will allow you to use the remote hacking device in order to tilt the ship. You then have a big boy predator section where you meet up with the machine guy for the first time. He is no match for you, so you easily defeat him. Unfortunately, Stark gets gassed with fear toxin. And now it's time for your second chance to get Scarecrow. You just need to pick the right one out of the two. Or I don't know, Batman can use one of his goddamn gadgets to get both of them at the same time, but I guess that's not an option for some reason. You chose poorly, so Scarecrow gasses you as well, to the point where Joker takes over for a bit and you beat the crap out of Scarecrow and you're about to kill him. Fortunately, Batman manages to regain control of his body and lets Scarecrow run away again. Maybe we should have let the Joker have the control for like 5 more seconds. Just 5 more. You leave the airship and I guess out of pity Scarecrow shows you where Barbara is held. Because you have absolutely no idea where to find her, so he decides to help you out a bit. I managed to find Barbara. However, she got sprayed with the fear gas and was terrified by me. There was nothing I could have done. It's not like I have the explosive gel and could blow up the window. There was definitely nothing I could have done. All I could do is watch as Barbara shot herself. I'm a failure. I am no hero. I cannot save my friends. I can't even finish this challenge in one video. I need to be better. I need to use the Batmobile less. I rely too much on it, and it only leads me to failure. Time and time again. So yeah, this is part 1 of the challenge. I will upload part 2 very soon, and we will find out how many gadgets you have to use in order to complete the Batman series. If you like this video and wanna check part 2, feel free to subscribe so you're notified whenever it comes out. You can also check my older Batman videos which are basically on the same topic, however, for the other Batman games. But for now, that's all from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!